Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pylon Fantasycast, episode 3. And this week sucked, not gonna lie to you. This week was a tough week in fantasy, and this was a tough week as a football fan. But let's just get into it. There was a lot of excitement this week. It was week 1. But it was a morale killer for your boy. If I steered you wrong in this past week, I'm sorry. Just to go and just say how unlucky I was this week. In the start, sit, sell video that we are now doing every week, I told you guys to start Derrick Henry and was wrong. So that should tell you where I'm at. A little bit deflated. We'll be all right. Just because we're going to bounce back, and we're going to come back, and we're going to kick everybody's butts week 2. In this episode, we are going to go through the players I'm still not sold on after week 1 performances, players I was wrong about, and players I was right about. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Starting with players I'm not sold on. First player, Jalen Hurts. I am still not sold on Jalen Hurts. I will say he looked great. And part of the reasons I wasn't, the real main reason as to why I was not sold on Jalen Hurts, as I mentioned multiple times throughout this podcast, we are on episode 3 of the Fantasycast and episode 8 total if you include the regular podcast. I love Jalen Hurts. I am a huge Jalen Hurts fan. However, I am not a believer in the Eagles franchise, but Nick Sirianni looks like a very good coach so far. And I'm taking that with a grain of salt, being they did just play the Atlanta Falcons, who look like they have the worst defense in the entire NFL. There's some stats I want to talk about, but I want to talk about the good and the bad of the stats. So the biggest weakness for Jalen Hurts in 2020 was he had the worst completion percentage of any quarterback in the NFL, any starting quarterback. And as a coach, I think what you would want to see, if I was a general manager, what I would want to see from my head coach or offensive coordinator is him playing to the strengths of my franchise quarterback and him creating an offense where he'll flourish it, right? I think flourish is a word we use a lot on this podcast, and I think sustainability is one of the biggest values I look for in a lot of my takes. A lot of my takes, if I haven't said it before, I'm going to say it now and kind of set the record straight. Unless I say otherwise, if I say that I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be good, what I'm saying is I don't think he'll be sustainably good. Sure, he'll flash. I mean, he just dogged Atlanta with 330 total yards. But is that sustainable for Jalen Hurts? I don't know yet. Do I like Jalen Hurts? Do I think he could be good? Yes. But I'm looking for sustainability. And the thing that I really liked about Nick Sirianni and his offense and what he did that's going to make Jalen Hurts a lot better is we talked about for a while now the 52% completion percentage. Nick Sirianni changed the offense to a bunch of high percentage throws, a lot of dink and dunk style plays. So the stats I pulled up are from NFL Next Gen Stats. Average completed air yards, 3.4 yards, 32nd in the NFL. So he's throwing the shortest distance of any quarterback in the league. Average intended air yards, 3.7, the lowest of any quarterback in the NFL. Longest completed air distance, 22nd in the NFL. So what Nick Sirianni is doing, and it is playing to Jalen Hurts' strengths, which is making him a more viable option to be a sustainably good quarterback, is just dink and dunk, trust your players to make plays, and Miles Sanders, who we're going to talk about later, Jalen Reagor, who looks like his career is about to prove to people why he's a first overall pick. And you have Smitty, who looks fantastic. And then what's going to happen is Jalen Hurts is going to be able to dink and dunk and repeat that for so long that when the defense isn't suspecting, they take their shot. And that is something that is very good coaching. That is great offensive play calling. That is great scheming. That is why Jalen Hurts is someone to me I'm not sold on yet, but I am leaning towards, at least for fantasy, he's going to be good. Will he be good for the Eagles sustainably? I don't know. But will Jalen Hurts be a good quarterback? It's looking like it, especially in this Nick Sirianni regime. So I'm very happy for Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts this is the perfect scheme for Jalen Hurts. But what I will say is it was against the Atlanta Falcons, and I do think they have a bottom 5 defense in the entire NFL. Week 2 will be a huge test for Jalen Hurts playing the 49ers. For me, in all PPR leagues, stock for Philly players is going up. I actually started Quez Watkins because I figured even if it's like a dogfight style game, which it wasn't, Philly just ended up blowing them out, Quez Watkins would be getting a lot of the checkdowns from Hurts, which it seems like the offense is just a bunch of checkdowns, which is great. Like, it worked. So I'm not knocking that or saying it as a bad thing, but Quez Watkins is someone particularly, like, I think Jalen Hurts is someone who's still trying to find his stride as a quarterback and find out what works for him, and hitting your slot receiver on quick routes is a good thing. This offense is going to be what it seems like is a yak-style offense. So it's going to be a huge yard-after-catch style offense, which is great for Miles Sanders, great for Kenneth Gainwell, who we talked about before. I think that stock for Philadelphia players in fantasy is going up. I think that this dink-and-dunk style offense is going to be really well for Jalen Hurts. I think it's going to be good for the Eagles. But the next player I wanted to talk about, who I'm not sold on and I still don't think is going to be good, Corey Davis. So Corey Davis had 2 touchdowns in his first outing as a New York Jet with 5 receptions and 97 yards. A lot of these stats came towards the latter half of the game. 1 touchdown was blown coverage and he was wide open. And that's no knock on Corey Davis, but you have to keep in mind this Jets team is the youngest team in the NFL, and the Panthers defense was the youngest defense in the NFL in 2020. I did predict that this would be a great game for Corey Davis. Go out and check the start, sit, sell video we have on YouTube. I think it's only down here for Corey Davis. So seriously, if I'm wrong, then you're selling a good player. But if I'm right, if I'm wrong, you're selling a good player, and you should get value back if you're a good negotiator and you're a good trader. But if I'm right, you're selling a mediocre player for way more value than you should be getting. I don't think this is sustainable for Corey Davis, just based off of his track record and history in the NFL. I also think that the schedule for the Jets only gets worse. This might have been their easiest game besides, I think they play the Jaguars and the Texans, which those could be good games for Corey Davis, but I don't think outside of that he has any favorable matchups. He has the Patriots next week. I think he's going to score under 10 points next week in fantasy. I could be wrong, and he might break over 10 points if you're going to nitpick me, but I don't think he had 5 catches for 97 yards. The one thing that is a positive for Corey Davis is, if you follow this podcast, you know I'm not high on Zach Wilson. However, Zach Wilson has a cannon, and that's like not deniable. The biggest strength Zach Wilson showed is his mobility to ad-lib, or his ability to ad-lib through his mobility. And if Corey Davis and him could kind of sync together and build the chemistry for when Zach Wilson is dancing in the pocket, then Corey Davis, I'll be wrong on Corey Davis and he'll be great. But that's because of Zach Wilson, not because of Corey Davis. But regardless, nobody cares about that. In fantasy, you just want points. I just don't think, I think, let's just talk about the next player that I'm not truly sold on, which is Zach Wilson. I just think that there's a lot of people just look at the stats from this game and go, oh, he threw for 260 yards and had 2 touchdowns. Wow, he must have been balling. Well, that is actually like the complete opposite of the case, in my opinion. I went back and rewatched every snap Zach Wilson took from that game, and he got really lucky that his stat line looked like this, to be honest. The fumble was bad. He does a lot of dancing in the pocket, a lot more than he should have. I think if he's going to go back there and try to ad-lib, he needs to learn when to throw the ball away, because this Panthers team was the youngest defense in 2020, and he did not look sharp in this game. The stat line says otherwise, but if you go back and watch it, he didn't look that great. He had a 54.1% completion percentage, was sacked six times, had 1 pick. Luckily, he had 1 pick, and he had 1 fumble. I counted he should have almost thrown 4 interceptions that were either tipped or dropped by defenders. And this is against a young defense. I think that when he plays New England this weekend, this stat line isn't going to look nearly... If he balls out against New England, I will never say a bad word about Zach Wilson again, but it's just not going to happen. Like, there's no way this kid who struggled against an inexperienced, new Carolina Panthers defense is going to play well against the best coach of all time who dominates young players and has a top defense in the league. There's no shot that happens. I think that the thing with Zach Wilson is it's not really like, I'm not saying, oh, he's going to bust because I don't like him or he's going to bust because I don't believe in his talent. No. The kid is exceptionally mobile in the pocket, more mobile than I ever give him credit for. He has a rocket arm, which I have been saying that I never doubted his arm talent, but it's his decision-making and can he play at this next level that I doubt, and can he play within a dysfunctional organization. And I get that the Jets are turning it around with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, but this kid looked like he did not look good against the Panthers. If I'm a Jets fan, like, I know that you guys are used to being bad forever, but like, this is not a game to hang your hat on or be comfortable in what you saw. He was 1 for 9, roughly. If I'm wrong, I'm close on this stat, but he was 1 for 9 on third downs. To give you a comparison of an elite quarterback, Justin Herbert was, I think, 13 for 16 on third down, which is the hardest down in football where you're expected to pass the ball and everybody knows you're going to pass the ball. That's the difference between a good quarterback and a bad quarterback. And I'm not saying, like, this is Zach Wilson's first game, so I'm not trying to condemn him to the chopping block, but you need to be able to perform on third down. And if you're not going to be able to perform against a young, inexperienced defense, why am I to believe you're going to do it against anybody else? They play Atlanta in a few weeks, and if he struggles, I think they play the Patriots next week, which I expect him to struggle. And then if he kind of bounces back and has a similar stat line against Atlanta that he does against Carolina, then, okay, this kid can learn from his mistakes. But if he struggles against Atlanta, being that Atlanta is a terrible defense, I think you should be worried as a Jets fan. Because now you're seeing him struggle against one, a young and experienced defense, but then he's struggling against a bad defense. I just don't think there's enough to be comfortable on. Like, I don't think he showed nearly enough to be comfortable on, and I don't think that this is any reason for you to have faith in him in fantasy. I mean, the pick and the fumble, like, that should have been he should have almost thrown 4 interceptions, which probably would have been a record in some facet of your first game ever. But again, there are a lot of things to like. The mobility is something to like. Being able to run is something to like, particularly for fantasy. He did have a rushing 2-point conversion, which was nice. They play action, rolls right, and he's into the end zone. He's a quick kid. Like, I'm not saying he's a bust, but I don't think he's worth the hype that he's getting. And this offensive line is bad. Like, Mekhi Becton is now out for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe even longer. So he's missing his starting left tackle. I think Elijah Vera Tucker missed the game. If I'm wrong on that, shame on me. But the offensive line is still a huge work in progress, and I don't believe in Corey Davis as a true wide receiver 1. Like, Corey Davis was a veteran playing against inexperienced corners. I think that the longest tenured cornerback in the league the Panthers have is 3 seasons. Corey Davis is going into his 7th or 8th season. So it was a rookie quarterback and a veteran playing against an inexperienced young defense. What is there to have faith in or confidence in? For fantasy, if this is your QB1 or your QB2, if he's your QB1, you got to do something. If he's your QB2, I mean, you can hold him. If you're super flexing, he's your QB2, you need to do something as well. So I just don't. The only upside I see in Zach Wilson is his pocket mobility and his arm. He has a great arm, but it's the decision-making I'm worried about. There were a bunch of open throws he missed, and there was a bunch of times he panicked, missing open people because he was panicked. I mean, it's hard not to be panicked after you get sacked 6 times, but I don't think this was nearly as good of an outing as people are giving it credit for. And I could be wrong, but this is something that you should keep an eye on. I don't think I'm wrong on Zach Wilson about this, and I'm definitely not sold on him after this performance. But to talk about the next player that I'm still not sold on, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had a pretty lackluster performance, but I do credit it to I think that was the worst game Matt Ryan has played as a professional. Matt Ryan, I think the Falcons' offense, if you exclude it like wide receivers or pass catchers, Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage, I think all combined for about 20, 25 points. So I'm not faulting Pitts for any of this. The targets were there. I think he had 8 targets. 3 were deemed uncatchable, so if you want to factor those in, 11 targets. But I think that Pitts is going to... The thing that's interesting about this is this performance is scary because this was against the Eagles. And the Eagles, to my knowledge, do not have the best defense. So I'm going to credit this to a bad game by Matt Ryan, but I also got to give Philly some respect for shutting down Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, and Kyle Pitts. So I'm not going to knock that. But I think this was just, season opener, bad performance from everybody. Let's see how they come back week 2. I still believe in Pitts. I'm not sold on... why Pitts is in here is I'm not sold on Pitts not living up to the hype yet. I think Pitts is still going to be a great player, and I think he's for certain going to bounce back after this. I think he's still going to be in the tight end 4 conversation when the season's done. We talk about sustainability. Kyle Pitts, to me, screams sustainability. He's sure-handed, he's massive, he's fast, and he could catch everything. I'm not worried about him. Matt Ryan just needs to put the ball where he could catch it. And you would think that Matt Ryan thought they drafted Hayden Hurst number 4 overall with how many times he threw it to Hayden Hurst. That made no sense to me. It just made me mad because Kyle Pitts is above and beyond one of the best players on that offense besides Calvin Ridley. The other thing is, which is encouraging for people who own Pitts, they put Pitts everywhere. He was out wide. He was in the slot. He was in the tight end position. They lined him up everywhere. So you see that they're trying to scheme for Pitts to get the ball. They're trying to scheme to get Pitts open, which is encouraging. Matt Ryan just had the worst game of his career. So I think do not hit the panic button on Kyle Pitts yet. I really do credit this to Matt Ryan being a bum and the offense just struggling. So we'll see how Matt Ryan bounces back. We'll see how Atlanta bounces back. I have a lot of confidence in Kyle Pitts. I do think he's going to live up to the hype. He's not going to pull an Evan Engram and just be the worst player ever. So those are players I'm not sold on just yet, whether it's a positive or a negative light. But the next segment, we're going to talk about players that I was right on, and then we're going to go from there. So players I was right on. I think the biggest takeaway from this is a lot of these takes to keep in mind. Like, again, we're focusing on sustainability. So far, they have proven that they're either continuing to sustain or they have reached my immediate expectations. So the first player that I was right on, Raheem Mostert. I had Raheem Mostert in the start, sit, sell for week 1 as a sell because this is someone who's getting drafted in the 7th, 8th round of drafts. And we all knew he was going to get hurt. And they have the 49ers, they went out of their way to draft Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon was a healthy scratch. It was a little bit confusing. But in drafts, you could have drafted Trey Sermon either picks before or after Raheem Mostert went, and you were already better off than drafting. Like, if you drafted Raheem Mostert, you basically just threw your 7th round, 8th round pick into the garbage can. I'm sorry, it's just that simple. It literally took 1 quarter for Raheem Mostert to get hurt, and he's out for 8 weeks. So, I mean, I think Helen Keller could have told you this one. This is all I really have to say about Raheem Mostert. Great player, great talent, but he's 31 and he's the most injury-prone player in the league. You want to talk about injury-prone? This dude gets a different injury every week and is out for multiple weeks. He had the one amazing run when they went to the Super Bowl, and for some reason, people just refuse to admit he's injury-prone and continue. It's like you are just drafting someone who is made of glass in a sport like football. and thinking it's a good idea. So if you drafted Raheem Mostert, shame on you. If you didn't sell Raheem Mostert, shame on you. He's out for 8 weeks, so he's done. But next player on this list, David Montgomery. This is very interesting because the pace David Montgomery was on was over 300 at the down the stretch when he finishes the RB 4 or 6, whatever it was. He was on pace for over 300 touches, over 100 yards per game, and a touchdown per game. He finished last night against the Los Angeles Rams, 108 yards, 16 carries, and 1 touchdown. And I think this is just the beginning for David Montgomery because you know that the locker room and head personnel for the Chicago Bears is looking at that performance from Andy Dalton and going, okay, now what? Because they're in a pickle where they made a horrible promise to Andy Dalton saying, hey, we are going to give you are our QB1. And I think they're trying to be a good organization and honor their promise to Andy Dalton, but that's how you lose locker rooms, is if you continue to start Andy Dalton, can you look your team in the face if you're Matt Nagy and say, we're trying to win every game we can? Excuse me. And I think if you start Andy Dalton, you can't do that. And I think once Fields gets the nod, I think my prediction was week 4, so right after September ends. But now I think it's going to be more likely week 2 or week 3. I think you got to give Andy Dalton one more week just because you said you were the quarterback one. You made a huge stink about it. And I mean, this is why the Bears are just so I don't want to say pathetic because that's not what I mean, but why would you promise Andy Dalton that and then go out and trade up to draft a quarterback? So you obviously knew as a franchise you were looking for a franchise quarterback. You were willing to pay a first-round pick to trade up for him, and you promised this dude a first-round job even though you knew you were going to draft his replacement. That makes no sense. But my point in all this saying is Fields is going to start earlier, and I think that is going to it's going to make David Montgomery's ceiling higher because Justin Fields is going to throws a better deep ball than Andy Dalton. He's more mobile than Andy Dalton, and you can't allocate the resources to stack the box against David Montgomery if Justin Fields is there because you still have to deal with Allen Robinson, you still have to deal with Darnell Mooney, and you now have Justin Fields who could run. And if you stack a box against the RPO, a lot of times it allows for explosive offensive plays. So I think David Montgomery is just getting started, and I think that I've been right on this take, and I think I'm going to be more right as the season gets on. Do I think he could sustain the pace? This is an insane pace. He was on pace for 1,600 rushing yards. Not total yards, rushing yards. I don't know if he could do that, but I think that he will finish with around 1,600 all-purpose scrimmage yards. And now he already has a touchdown for the season. So I like David Montgomery. Tariq Cohen is not healthy yet, and I don't think it's going to matter. I think David Montgomery is showing that he could be a serviceable bell cow, and he could continue to dominate by himself. I mean, the most impressive thing about this, one, he's continuing his pace from last season, which is insane. 2, he did it against the Los Angeles Rams, who have the best defense in the NFL. That's why I'm this is kind of scary, and David Montgomery is going to outplay his ADP by a mile if he can keep doing this. And if Justin Fields plays to his potential, it's only going to get better for David Montgomery. So David Montgomery is someone I'm moving for in every league. I'm actively in trade conversations right now for David Montgomery. So keep an eye on David Montgomery. Next player I was right about, Joe Mixon. So why I was so high on Joe Mixon, despite the negatives about him being the injury history, the offensive line, he is in the same situation as Najee Harris, and we saw him pick up a Najee Harris expected workload last night. Or not last night, on Sunday. So, yeah. But the expected workload for Najee Harris was at least 25 carries, probably about 30 looks per game. And Najee Harris is playing behind a horrible... a quote horrible offensive line. And I'm saying quote because I think that everybody is kind of it was way too quick to assume that offensive line was going to be worse than it is. If you look at where those guys were drafted from, what schools they were drafted from, and you look at what rounds they were drafted in, the Steelers' offensive line, it's going to take a step back, but it's not bad. I have to look at the stats and the next-gen stats for the O-line against the Bills this past weekend, because I haven't done that yet, and I'm not going to act like I did. But Joe Mixon, playing behind a worse offensive line, saw 30 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown. So this guy, if he could keep this up, again, this is someone who I had pegged as being overlooked kind of for no reason. People were overlooking the obvious. But if you have Joe Mixon, and I cannot stress this enough, go and stash Chris Evans. Chris Evans is the only backup in the Cincinnati backfield. Joe Mixon already was getting looked at for an injury in that game, in the Week 1 game against the Vikings, which is scary because even though he's this talent, if he goes down, Chris Evans is the only person to pick up that workload, and it would suck to have him be on a different team if you have Joe Mixon, because you basically just lost your third-round pick with no backup plan. So I would for certain stash Chris Evans. But I was right about Joe Mixon in that he did see a Najee Harris workload, and I expect him to continue to see that workload. This Bengals offense is starting to look way better or not way better. I think it's starting to live up to the hype that people were giving it, and I'm happy about that. Like I've said this before, the NFL is better when everybody's healthy because it's better teams with better players. So I hope Joe Mixon stays healthy. I hope Joe Burrow stays healthy. I hope that offensive line could keep him healthy. I think he was sacked 3 times already, which is crazy. But I would definitely stash Chris Evans if you have Joe Mixon. And the last player I was right about is Ezekiel Elliott. And I was right about Ezekiel Elliott kind of in a negative light. I expected a bigger than expected Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard split. I thought the split would be 60-40 in terms of total touches. So not carries, but total touches. The thing that is concerning to me about Zeke, let me explain why I was right first. If you don't believe in the power of the media, Ezekiel Elliott is the only player, because he's a Dallas Cowboy, that can move up draft boards without doing anything. He's coming off of the worst season of his career. All he got was camp hype, and that was enough to put him back in the top 5 conversation on fantasy drafts. He hasn't done, like, newsflash, he didn't do anything to deserve that hype. The only report was he lost weight, looks faster, and he's dominating in training camp. Which, again, I've said this multiple times. He should have dominated training camp because the Cowboys' run defense was the 31st last year in 2020. So Zeke did not do anything to deserve the hype he's getting. One, I don't know why people were just so quickly to be like, yeah, Zeke's back. Like, he didn't do anything. To compare him to David Montgomery. David Montgomery finishes like the RB1 for the last 6 weeks of the year in 2020. Zeke did not do that. He finishes the RB11, I think. RB9 or RB11. But this is my concern with Zeke that I didn't see coming, but supports my, reasons to be concerned about Zeke. Dak Prescott threw the ball 60 times. And that in itself, cannot happen every week, and I don't expect it to happen every week for the longevity of Dak's shoulder, and he's been dealing with shoulder injuries. But the thing that I'm worried about is why wasn't Zeke getting touches, and why was he not getting pass reps? They utilized Pollard way more than they utilized Zeke in the passing game. And I think the biggest concern for Ezekiel Elliott is that Mike McCarthy is no longer calling plays. And I'm going to say that one more time. Mike McCarthy is no longer calling plays for the Dallas Cowboys. The reason why this is a concern is if you are a Packers fan, you know that no matter who your running back was, it could have been 450-pound Eddie Lacy, who couldn't run faster than a snail, was getting 30 touches a game no matter what. Zeke had 11 carries for, I think, 33 yards. That's the concerning part about Zeke. if you're going to run an air raid offense, and if you're a Dallas fan, you should be excited about this. Your offense, already being as talented as it is, was probably the most creative offense out of all 32 teams in the entire NFL. Every play, one of your star players, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, who already can outplay a cornerback covering them, was being schemed to get the ball creatively, whether that's hesitated routes, pre-snap motion, etc. The Cowboys were the most creative team in the NFL on Thursday night. But again, the Cowboys are a team where they would run Zeke no matter what, stack box or not. So you have a new play caller. But this is where I'm kind of looking at the silver lining in this. The Cowboys had 8+ defenders in the box on 54.55% of snaps according to Next Gen Stats. The new play caller, his name is escaping me, your offensive coordinator, if you're a Cowboys fan, might just not like running into the looks he was getting from the Bucs. That could be true. And in that case, then maybe Zeke will play his way into it, earn the hype he's been getting, but I don't think he will. Being how they utilize Pollard over Zeke in the passing game. However, against other teams, they may feed Zeke more, but it looks like they don't want to be a Zeke-dependent team, and they're going to let Dak take the reins and throw the ball 40 times a game on average, which is insane. I think Dak led the league in 2020, or had the highest pass attempts in a game in 2020 at 44, which he blew out of the water, throwing 59 times on Thursday, which is really interesting. That's the most interesting thing to me about this. Is are the Cowboys going to continue to pass the ball in that fashion? And that number of 59 pass attempts could be higher than it will be because the Cowboys, I believe, had 4 turnovers for them, so they led the turnover differential and the time of possession, but they didn't try to slow down the clock at all. They just kept throwing, which is, again, a lot of concern here for Zeke because this new the new scheme they're running on offense does not look like Zeke fits in it. If they're going to pass the ball to the running back, it's going to be to Tony Pollard. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I know I've kind of been talking in circles. But I was right about Zeke, and I am getting more concerned about Zeke because I do want to see it. If I was a Zeke owner, which I'm not because it's just the way the chips fell in all of my drafts, but I'm not jumping ship on Zeke yet. I think that you got to see another week or two with Zeke and then make a decision. But if you don't like Zeke and you are subscribing to what I'm seeing, then I would sell him before it gets worse because you're kind of playing Russian roulette with Zeke right now because he could get better or he could be worse. Or not worse, but remain the same in that he doesn't really have a fit into this offense. But those are all the players I was right about. And let's wrap this up and talk about players I was wrong about. So, players I was wrong about, and this is either takes I had for the immediate that were just wrong, in which case I apologize, or the kind of the views of I think long term this is what's going to happen, and I was just wrong. So, a lot of wrong here. Basically, I'm an idiot, and I'm sorry I led you guys astray as my little sheep. But first player, DAndre Swift. So, this one hurts me because I traded Swift in every league, and it was never because I doubted DAndre Swift's talent. And let me preface with, I still might be right about DAndre Swift in the instance that he does end up going to prison, but I'm not gonna use that as an excuse. In the short term, in the immediate, I was wrong about DAndre Swift, and I'll admit that. My biggest concern with DAndre Swift was being in a committee, and what we saw this weekend was it does not matter if he's in a committee; he will still produce. And what's interesting about this is minutes before the game started, there was an update if you're a fantasy player that uses the Sleeper app, DAndre Swift was not the starter in this game, which is the most interesting, fascinating thing to me because he wasn't the starter, but he still saw a fat workload. And I think that they are planning to use Jamaal Williams as their bruiser on the ground, being that DAndre Swift only had, I think, 36 rushing yards. Like, he had, I think, 11 attempts for 36 yards. You might need to fact check me on that. But where Swift did excel, and this is kind of where this is the upside of DAndre Swift, is in the passing game, being that he is probably one of the best wide receivers that the Lions have, even though he's a running back. And he ate in the passing game, like absolutely ate. So even if he's in a committee coming out of the backfield, it does not hurt Swift at all, and I was 100% wrong about that. So apologies to you guys there. But Swift and Jamaal Williams finish as the RBs 4 and 5 of the week so far. We still have yet to see the Ravens game and the Ravens game and the Raiders game. Yes, Josh Jacobs is the Raiders, but as I'm recording this, that game hasn't happened yet. So these numbers may change, but Swift faced an 8-box personnel 36.36% of his snaps, and he did not produce in the running game. Which is not concerning. I just don't think that's his role in this offense, is to be that bruiser on the ground. I think in a rebuilding franchise, especially if you're in Dynasty, Swift is like such a hot pickup to have. Swift, I think that the Lions want to preserve Swift because he is one of their best assets on offense, on the team in general. And I feel really horrible because news came out this morning that Jeff Okudah suffered a ruptured Achilles. And you want to talk about like injuries, and you want to talk about career-ending injuries. Like, people are concerned about your ACL. No. The new death sentence in modern sports is the Achilles tear. And unless you're Kevin Durant and you get lucky and it's like not as bad of an Achilles tear, you're done. Your career's over. You'll never be the same player. And like, I hope I'm wrong about this. Is something I hope I'm wrong about, because this is like, Jeff Okudah was a 3rd overall pick 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 2020 or 2019. Now I'm all mixed up. But Jeff Okudah was a 3rd overall pick. And like, that's the player that the Lions definitely wanted to preserve. That was going to be one of their cornerstones on defense. And you just hate to see it. Like, you hate to see people get hurt. And I think that they're going to use Jamaal Williams as a sacrificial lamb, being that Jamaal Williams is on the tail end of his career, and you have a young up-and-coming stud in DAndre Swift, who you hope to stay healthy and you hope does not go to prison. And if you don't know why I'm saying go to prison, apparently DAndre Swift is a potential murder suspect for a case in Philly, but nothing has come out about it yet. It's pretty new. But I think that for Dynasty and for like the Lions franchise, like, this is someone who they hope to have around for a long time. And he's an exceptional pass catching back. He's a great runner, but I think they want to keep him out of the running game because they want to keep him around. So I think with all of that being said, the tangible value for Swift in fantasy this year is the passing game. And Swift has been dominant in the passing game and will continue to dominate for weeks to come. So I was wrong about DAndre Swift. I'll be the first to admit it. I hate being wrong, but I'm someone who definitely can own up to his mistakes and own up to when they're wrong. So sorry if you sold DAndre Swift. Sorry if I led you astray. I'll be a better shepherd next time. But next player on this list, I have JaMarr Chase. And where I was wrong about JaMarr Chase was not saying, I have never once, if you go back through this podcast, said that, or any video on YouTube for that matter, I have never once said JaMarr Chase is a bust, and I never once said JaMarr Chase will be a bust. I said he will be a breakout. It's just a matter of when, and can he cope with all of the internal pressure coming from Cincinnati and the local Cincinnati area. And I'm very happy the breakout came early for him, because this is someone who I was just worried the pressure was going to get to them, and it was going to take longer than expected for him to break out. In one of the leagues I had JaMarr Chase in, I ended up trading him well before preseason. So it wasn't because I doubted him or anything. I just don't want it to be on the record that, oh, you're lying and you thought Chase was going to be a bust. No, I ended up trading him for Jonathan Taylor. So it was just too much value to pass up. And it's a dynasty league, so it's like Jonathan Taylor's like the best dynasty asset you could have at the running back position. So I just couldn't pass it up. And I did end up getting a second-round pick also in the trade. I ended up trading, to put the whole trade on the record, it was DAndre Swift and JaMarr Chase for Jonathan Taylor and a top 5 second-round pick. And if you're in my league and you're listening, you could argue that top 5 contingency is negotiable, but I think you're wrong. So I'm very happy for JaMarr Chase. This is someone who I think is one of the most cannot miss breakout candidates. Not breakout candidates. One of the most can't miss wide receiver prospects ever. I think he has all of the intangibles. I think his combine was like very close to Julio Jones's combine. So he has all of the intangibles. He is 6 feet tall, which isn't short for a wide receiver, but like if he was like 6'3" or 6'2", like holy crap. But I'm really happy for JaMarr Chase, and I was wrong about JaMarr Chase in that I expected him to break out coming at the back end of September. I'm really happy it was week 1. I'm really happy the Bengals beat the Minnesota Vikings because Kirk Cousins is not a good NFL quarterback. And by what I'm saying by not good is, 1, he doesn't deserve the hype he gets. 2, he cannot win big games. And apparently he can't win any game because he couldn't beat the Bengals. And that's no knock against the Bengals, but the Vikings by far outclassed the Bengals on offense and defense. Super happy for Joe Burrow. I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan, and I am so happy that he came out and looked the way he did and looked as confident as he did and came out and got a win week 1 coming off of that gruesome injury he suffered to his knee last season. So super happy about JaMarr Chase. Super happy about the Bengals. I was wrong. It cost me some fab. I'm someone who believes in his takes to the end, which is why I'm so passionate about some of the stupid takes that you guys may think I have. But I will see them through to the end. And I'm happy that I was wrong about this one. I'm happy that it came sooner rather than later. And I'm excited to watch JaMarr Chase. I'm excited to watch the JaMarr Chase-Joe Burrow connection develop because I think there's more potential behind that than Matt Ryan and Julio Jones because I think though JaMarr Chase is not as good of a receiver as Julio Jones is when their careers are over, I think Joe Burrow will be way better than Matt Ryan was when their careers are over, as both of them are number 1 overall picks. JaMarr Chase and Julio are both top 10 picks. I'm super excited about this for years to come, and I'm really happy for JaMarr Chase. JaMarr Chase, the expectation for JaMarr Chase now is keep doing what he did this weekend. Show your talent, show your athletic ability, show your ability to separate. One of his big knocks was he looks like he can't separate in preseason, which is a concern I had about him because I'm a big believer you either need to be like a Calvin Johnson where it doesn't matter where you set how much you separate, you're still going to catch the ball, or you have to be like Devontae Adams and separate to get open so that to make up what you can't physically. So you need the space to give yourself the space to catch the ball, or you need to be able to out-dominate someone physically. And JaMarr Chase, I think it's only 1 game, but he did average 2.2 yards of separation in that game against the Vikings. And the Vikings secondary is not great, but it's still a good sign for JaMarr Chase. So JaMarr Chase is living up to the potential, and I'm happy about that because I don't want to see someone end up like Corey Davis. I don't want a franchise to spend a top 5 pick and have Corey Davis be the outcome. So super excited for JaMarr Chase. I don't know who the Bengals play week 2. But regardless, like in fantasy, this is going to be a shootout type team. And like I had the Bengals pegged in that shootout category. I don't think they're trash. I think what keeps them out of the trash category, is Joe Burrow and this offense's ability to outperform, is to be good enough on offense to make up for your defense. That's a shootout team, in my opinion. So JaMarr Chase now going to be a focal point in a shootout-style offense on a shootout team. Very excited for JaMarr Chase. His fantasy value has gone up, and it's at where it should be, in my opinion. That's enough about JaMarr Chase. Let's talk about the last airbender in Cadarius Tony. Where are you at, bro? Like, where did you go? And if you're the Giants, bro, what was that? You drafted this kid 20th overall, and you give him 2 snaps? I don't know who to be more mad at. Jason Garrett or Joe Judge for allowing that to happen. Or, we're not going to get into Dave Gettleman right now, but Cadarius Tony, I mean, this is what I was subscribed to, and if you have followed this podcast and you saw a special guest between two pylons with Justin Pennick, co-host for Talking Giants, biggest Giants podcast in the world, and the Dominican Republic, one of the takes I had for Cadarius Tony was he was going to be a huge X factor as to why the Giants win, being that he's so dynamic, and Jason Garrett has been promising a more dynamic offense for the New York Giants, and there's no tape on him. Why they gave him 2 snaps and then benched him for the rest of the game, shame on Joe Judge for allowing that to happen, and shame on Jason Garrett for not using him more. He's your 20th overall pick. You need to you need to let him fail. He needs to be on the field getting reps. So I was horribly wrong in the fact that I thought the Giants were smart enough to use him. 1. 2, I was horribly wrong in that he didn't even freaking play. So sorry if you started Cadarius Tony this week. I'm an idiot for trusting Jason Garrett. He is by far the worst. He's the only offensive coordinator in the entire NFL that schemed to throw a pass to his fullback. So I will never trust Jason Garrett again. I think that Jason Garrett completely caps this Giants team offensively and their potential to win the division, and he caps this team in fantasy. Because if you have Kenny Golladay, they schemed a 4-year, $100 million plus signing, 6 targets. How do you do that, man? How if you're on the 1-yard line, instead of throwing it down the field, taking a shot to Kenny Golladay to get you out of there, you think, second down, let's run a little out route to our fullback and Elijah Penn. What is that, man? Holy crap. So I was wrong about Cadarius Tony. I don't think the talent is any issue with Cadarius Tony. Jason Garrett's an idiot. He's the worst offensive coordinator in the entire NFL. I don't care what anybody says. I expected more. Now why I think I'm wrong about Cadarius Tony, I don't know if they're going to even use him. Why didn't you just take Rashawn Slater if you got this dynamic playmaker who you're not going to work in pre-snap motion and you're going to bench if he gets negative 2 yards on 2 horrible play designs by Jason Garrett? So, I have Cadarius Tony. He's riding my bench until Jason Garrett proves me wrong. Holy crap. And I'm not someone try not to get too fired up on this, but wow. Holy bad by this team. Holy bad. I'm giving the Giants 2 more weeks. If you follow the regular podcast, for all the people that follow the NFL coverage, the Giants have 2 weeks for me to prove to me that they could win this division. If they lose to Washington, whatever. Washington's good. If they lose to Atlanta, I'm out. I'm done on them. Sell everything. Start over. Hit the reset button. Fire everybody. Do what you got to do. But shame on John. This team will not be successful until John Meyer can learn to own up to his own failures. Because Dave Gettleman will fall on the sword for John Mara, and that was not a Dave Gettleman hiring. That was a John Mara hiring. So Dave Gettleman will fall on the sword for Jason Garrett, even though he has nothing to do with Jason Garrett. And shame on Joe Judge for allowing this offense to be the exact same. And this, why I'm harping on this caps this team for fantasy. Hey, I would steer clear away from Giants skill players in fantasy because I have Cadarius Tony up on here because I had a prediction for him. But, Jason Garrett, if you take out the game where Saquon got hurt in Chicago in 2020, he is the only coordinator or coach that has kept Saquon Barkley to back-to-back under 50 scrimmage yards in games. That's not people want to crucify Daniel Jones. Jason Garrett has limited one of the most talented running backs to under 50 yards in 2 games. That's coaching. That is coaching and scheme. You're running pass plays to Devontae Booker over Saquon Barkley. I don't know if he has a secret vendetta against the Giants and wants them to suck, but Saquon Barkley will, if he stays on the Giants, which I hope he doesn't, I hope they move off of him for his sake and let him go blossom into the talent he is and go win somewhere else and set the records he's supposed to set somewhere else. Because on the Giants, his career will be a what if. And I don't want to see that happen. As a sports fan, I hate what if careers. Prime example, Derrick Rose. What if Derrick Rose never got hurt? I hate that. I hate asking myself that because Derrick Rose almost beat LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh in the finals by himself on the Bulls in 2011. And I hate that. Or I think it's 2011. Not as good at basketball as I am football, but God, I hate Jason Garrett. Anyway, next player I was wrong about. Miles Sanders. And I don't think I've made any statements on Miles Sanders on this podcast, but why I wanted to put him on here is just to keep it honest for my friends that I talk to on the daily that do listen to this podcast. I have shied away from Miles Sanders and told them to shy away from Miles Sanders. And I want to create an aspect of integrity for myself that I'm going to say when I'm right, when I was right, and when I was wrong, when I was wrong. And I don't think I've said anything about Miles Sanders on the podcast. But I was wrong about Miles Sanders. And the main reason why I shied away from Miles Sanders in almost every league and told people to is, one, Doug Peterson, for whatever reason, can never make him work. I think Miles Sanders is one of the most talented running backs in the entire NFL. But for whatever reason, Doug Peterson cannot make him work. And the other thing is, Miles Sanders has failed to stay healthy for a full season. But in like a dink and dump style offense, dunk style offense, whatever you want to call it, PPR value for Miles Sanders is high. And Miles Sanders finishes one of the best running backs this week. So I was wrong about Miles Sanders in my private circles. So to those guys, I'm sorry. And I kind of knew like I should gamble on Miles Sanders because in almost every draft I did this season, Miles Sanders weirdly fell to like the 5th round. Or the back end of the 4th, whereas ADP is, I think, middle of the back end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th. So I kind of was thinking to myself, like, should I just take him just because the value he could outplay his ADP? And I really do think that in this offense for fantasy, I do not think the Eagles will win a lot of games in the NFL, but I do think Miles Sanders' ceiling is getting higher in this offense because you have to keep it honest because Jalen Hurts is a very good running quarterback. You have to keep it honest because he could throw. You still have the explosive shots that this Nick Sirianni offense is going to take, which is the Eagles are doing everything right, and I'm happy for them because you want the NFL is better when there are better teams in the NFL. For instance, if every team was like the NFC West, the NFL will be great because every game is competitive. There's no games where you go in and you're like, oh, this is going to be a blowout, which I kind of think everybody was expecting with the 49ers and the Detroit Lions. But anyway, I was wrong about Miles Sanders, and I'm excited for the Eagles because they're doing everything right. Nick Sirianni looks like he was the right hire. But again, can Miles Sanders stay healthy? Like, I was wrong in the immediate for telling people to not draft Miles Sanders. Was I right in the long term of Miles Sanders is going to get hurt or this Eagles team is not going to score a lot of points? The jury is still out on that. But I'm going to keep it honest. In the short term, I was wrong about Miles Sanders. Jalen Hurts looks good. They did play the worst team in the NFL, the worst defense in the NFL, in my opinion, in the Atlanta Falcons. But Eagles stock for me is going up. And I think that I still am curious to Jalen Hurts about real life. Like, will he be good in real life? And will he win games for his team? But for fantasy, he's starting to look like a really good option. And Fordyce, if you're listening to this, I need to do better of telling my brain that we're talking about fantasy or real life. So if you were talking about fantasy, then I'm starting to agree with you about Jalen Hurts. But the next player on this list and the last player never mind, there's nobody else on this list. But one group in particular I was wrong about that I will talk through really briefly before we close this out. The Jaguars. I think the Houston Texans went out and decimated 80% of America's parlays for this last weekend, if you were a bettor. So, now that we have a few extra minutes, I'm going to sit here and tell you who the worst head coach in the entire NFL is. And his name is Urban Meyer. Holy crap. Urban Meyer. Let me call the plays next game. You have James Robinson, young bell cow running back, coming off a 1,400 yard season, and you gave him 5 carries? You gave Carlos Hyde, who's older than my dad, who's in his 60s, 10 carries. I don't know if you wanted Trevor Lawrence to just play through his struggles or something, but you are not looking smart. You just look like an idiot. James Robinson averaged 5 yards per carry in that game, and you gave him 5 touches. And I think you gave him 3 targets in the passing game. You don't look smart, man. You look like a jackass. I don't know what even to say about that. Like, dude, your quarterback is struggling, and you have this running back who, like, this is the thing, right? If you don't run the ball, that's one thing. But don't run play action after you don't run the ball. Nobody's going to jump on a play action snap if you have ran the ball for a combined 6 times by the third quarter. And if you do jump on that play, you're an idiot if you're playing defense. I mean, like, dude, I gave you the benefit of the doubt and said, oh, wow, you drafted Travis Etienne because you were smart and you wanted to recreate the new generation of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But now I think you're just an idiot. You are so dumb that you, one, got blown out by the Houston Texans, who have, by the way, a number 30th ranked defense, and you ran the ball a combined 14 times, and you gave the lion's share of the reps to Carlos Hyde. You are an idiot, Urban Meyer. You are not a good head coach, and you are not smart. And you know what? I don't know if you just want the attention. We've talked about you being a crazy attention seeker in the past, but holy crap, man. Run the ball. Like, if Trevor Lawrence has thrown 2 picks and is struggling, run the ball. Open up play action. Run to the outside. Now I'm sitting here like, dude, I just traded for James Robinson, and am I an idiot because you can't coach? And I gave you the benefit of the doubt thinking, here are your options. A 21-year-old who just broke the undrafted free agent rookie record in yards of any undrafted free agent ever, or 67-year-old Carlos Hyde. And I'm sitting here on my podcast, on my show, saying, apologizing for being wrong for saying to start James Robinson because you wanted to run the ball with Carlos Hyde more than James Robinson. Hey, on that note, dude, I'm done. I'm going to get too fired up, and I'm going to give myself a heart attack. My blood pressure is already too high after watching this weekend and watch every take crumble because of God not wanting me to be a gambler in any facet known to man. But anyway, dude, if you liked what you watched, I gotta catch my breath. If you liked what you watched, if you didn't like what you heard, if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like it, tell me what I did wrong in the comments. Tell me, you can come back next week and I'll be better. But best of luck this week in fantasy. That's going to do it for the Fantasycast episode 3. I'm going to keep dropping out more shorter videos for fantasy throughout the week. We are going to have updated power rankings, a new start, sit, sell for week 2. And if you have any ideas for more fantasy content you want to see, please let me know in the comments, or if you're my boys that listen to this, let me know. Like, shoot me a text, because this is now my full-time hobby. I don't even play video games anymore, unfortunately. So let me know. Let me know what I could do better to get more views and to get stuff. I'm gonna start a TikTok. We're going in. We're getting fully invested. But anyway, God, Urban Meyer, you make me so mad. You make me so mad. If you like what you heard, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what I could do better. But that's going to do it for this episode. Catch you next week. Peace! Catch you next week. Peace!